Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to episode 6, already 6th episode of the Mo Show. Today, I would like to introduce a friend. She's the co-founder of ACT. ACT is an adult and child therapy center here in Jeddah, one of the first of its kind. Her name is Assia Khashoggi. Welcome, Assia.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's an honor to be here.
I cannot tell you how grateful I am for you being here, and I know it's your first podcast, so this means a lot to me.
It is my first podcast.
How's it been? How's life?
I think to a large extent it's been a great opportunity to be able to face certain aspects of ourselves that we're always trying to escape.
Yeah, realization and all that.
Yeah, because so much of life, we're trying to distract ourselves from what's uncomfortable, or run away from, different difficult feelings.
Yeah.
So
the nature of your profession is already coming out, and I love it. So I want to talk about ACT, the Adult and Child Therapy Center located here in Jeddah. In my travels, I've heard of it. I've loved the initiative. I thought it was more children related, but then as I spoke to you in the days leading up to this podcast, it's a lot more than that. Can you just talk a little bit about ACT?
Yeah, it's been 10 years. We started off in my basement. We're 5 female psychologists, psychotherapists that started it off. Tala Suleiman, Reem Al-Harthi, Rul Ashur, and Razan Nazir. And they're all active professionals.
Till today, yeah?
Till today,
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're still the same 5 partners.
You studied psychology?
I studied psychotherapy.
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 Okay.
Psychotherapy.
Opening in 2010, my guess, and again, forgive my negligence, I would imagine it was one of the first establishments of its kind in Saudi.
Absolutely.
We aren't really advanced in the world of psychotherapy or therapy in general.
Yeah, that's really true. We were the first standalone kind of center dedicated to psychotherapy and trying to be, holistic, to service, children, parents, couples, in psychotherapy, art therapy, marriage counseling. So it's been a ride. It's been a ride because it's lots of challenges being the first center of its kind. Yeah. And now there's so many that have popped up. I mean, I think during our first 8 years, the Minister of Health changed like 5 times, and the laws and regulations changed.
And you go through that, the Ministry of Health, you need to be attested by them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So it's pretty much a medical facility, labeled under a medical facility.
Yeah, we have our license from the Ministry of Health, which is a real honor, and we've fought hard for that. And everyone has to be licensed at the center as well.
It's crazy how many people you say have opened after you. It's somebody brings that one good idea, and before you know it, you have a couple other people copying that idea. Yeah. It's nice to be the first,
It's nice to be the first, and it's great that there's so many centers, because we all need it. We all need that support. There was that taboo initially.
Taboo, that's the word, absolutely.
The taboo, we don't want to go to a therapist, or there's something wrong with us. But it's not about mental illness, it's about mental wellness.
Yeah.
And we're all human, and we all need that help, and we're all struggling in our own ways.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's so many more centers is great. We're of course it's nice to have been the first.
Yeah. But you're happy to see people are getting help.
So happy to
the
see
number of centers there is a testament to how many people perhaps need help.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people think that they don't need therapy. I think we all on some level need it. Nobody's perfect. Life is stressful. Like, how many times would you be chilling at home watching TV and you get a notification on your phone saying that something awful has happened somewhere?
Yeah.
Now repeat that once a week, 52 weeks a year. That's going to affect your stress levels. It might have been a simpler time 200 years ago without the power of the mobile phone reaching you wherever. And I just feel that on some level we all could use a bit of therapy in our lives.
Yeah, and I think what people are against, or what they're scared of, is their definition of what therapy is. But therapy is it's something I live for, in a sense. It's something we all do for each other, and the space that's created in the therapy room with my clients, or with every therapist's clients, is so special, because a lot of it is based on the therapeutic relationship that you create. So it's also about matching and being with the right kind of therapist, because that relationship is a template for your other relationships.
I can't imagine how it changed your life just with the amount of people that you have been exposed to over the past 10 years, as opposed to if you were to perhaps go down the road of a desk job, for example, okay, like myself. You put yourself in a position where you've got a revolving door of people walking into your facility saying, help me. The stories, which I know you can't for client confidentiality reasons, but the stories that you must have, the relationships that you must have bonded with these people, it's probably why you've always been empathetic and kind towards people, and I think it needed someone with your kind of personality to go out there and help people, but even more so, putting yourself in people's shoes. I think it takes someone like a personality like you to help people who are in need of help.
Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
It's a subject that's so close to my heart, so I speak very passionately about it. As a person who's recently struggled from anxieties himself, it's a world I knew nothing about, and now I was like, oh, okay, so that's what that is. And if ever I hear anyone say the word anxiety or complain about anxiety, or I recently saw a girl hyperventilating, like my heart stopped for them, because I know how powerless you feel when you're, under such duress. Yeah,
it's really tough. I mean, you say, my being a therapist and, going out and helping people. But it's so funny, the synchronicity of how much they've helped me as well.
That's crazy.
I'm not the expert. When you come into a room with your therapist, I'm only the facilitator, because everyone is the expert on themselves, and you kind of, offer a helping hand or help guide them with the best of what you know in that moment. But every time I have a client, it's so funny how it might resonate with something I'm going through or something personal in my life. So I've learned so much from each of them, and they give you so much trust. So it's such an honor to have that time with them. And when I was really young, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I was like, the law, and I want to help people and help them get their way and so on. But it wasn't really the law that was interested me as much as it was helping people and or helping them figure out what way to take. So that therapy room later on became that space. It's a space of possibility. So it's not there's something wrong with you. It's kind of also a space just to look at your life and to think, am I living, my personal legend out? Am I living authentically, as we say? Am I listening to my heart? You can just go into therapy and be like, something doesn't feel right in life. Anxiety is also something. Why are we so anxious all the time? I mean, the world acts against us. The world is programmed to make us feel anxious, and we kind of cover it up with band-aid solutions like buying stuff or food or
quick fixes.
They
don't really do the job in the long term.
No, not even last a few seconds.
At all.
The dopamine hits.
It's got an expiry date. It's a cheap dopamine fix.
It's a cheap dopamine fix, especially our phones. And we can talk a bit more about it later. But it's a consumer society that makes us all into these kind of victims on a hamster wheel, kind of chasing.
It's funny when you say phones, because a guy that I follow and really appreciate his wisdom is a guy by the name of Naval. He says the moment that the iPhone was introduced in 2005, boredom was dead. But I think, yes, it killed boredom, but at the same time, it only amounted to being cheap dopamine.
Absolutely.
Like what's if that's cheap dopamine, then what's the opposite of that? A healthy lifestyle, eating healthy, a good workout. That's expensive dopamine as far as I'm concerned. Good relationships.
Yeah.
Speaking of like relationships, as far as what you guys do in ACT, it's more than just child therapy. It's partner, so marriage therapy as well. We have corporate therapy if someone has a problem with his boss. So it's
absolutely.
3 pillars, if I'm not mistaken, judging by what I read.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also go into companies and do programs for them as well, just for better work environment, stress management.
Was that the last thing you guys did? Like you started off with child therapy and adult therapy, and then going into companies and having more corporate therapy. Is that one of the last initiatives that you guys did?
We've been doing it all along on a smaller basis, and now we're trying to make it probably more of our
That's really
core,
interesting, by the way. Because a lot of people keep in their feelings of how they feel towards their superiors, their their subordinates, and vice versa. It's really endless. The amount of help you can get in areas you thought you never needed help in.
Absolutely, and so much of it comes down to also boundaries. working on your boundaries. We do so many workshops throughout for different people on things like, boundaries, on healthy relationships. We've gone into schools. We've done mindfulness and meditation programs for teachers to train the students and to support teachers themselves. We've done workshops, resilience workshops in KAUST.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Making the teachers self-sufficient, so it's not like a case of you guys continuously coming back to them.
Yeah, and I mean, teachers, Allah yahmihum, all parents now, during Corona really have a new appreciation.
Oh, they do. Oh,
Teachers
absolutely.
have to,
globally. Has the landscape changed in Saudi? Are people more accepting? So someone recently told me that every man and woman, every marriage should seek therapy. And I went a step further and I said, every man and woman to marry should seek therapy prior to their marriage.
Absolutely.
To know what they're getting into, to know how to, the expectations, how to treat the other one, because you're asking essentially someone who's lived a totally different life and someone who's lived another totally different life to share a house. Problems will arise if you lack something as simple as consideration, if you're not a communicator, if you just go about without much concern. I mean, there's a lot that couples can work on prior to getting married. It's
a really important point. You're going to go buy a car, you take it for a test drive. You're going to go, work in a certain field, you get an education in it. Yeah. So, with marriage, and we've done that at ACT actually. We had premarital workshops on how the brain of the woman, works, how the brain of the man works. Two of the most important things where you spend most of your life is, being married in our culture, especially because you don't live as couples. There is no trial. Yeah. There is no test drive. And people come, let's say, for couples therapy, and they want to either, usually they come too late when there's a problem in their marriage, or they're thinking about divorce, and they're like, okay, this is the last chance. We're like, come much earlier, come much earlier, and sometimes people, they think, oh no, you're there to save your marriage. Maybe that's not only the answer. Maybe divorce is a healthy option for some people, and that's changed in our society as well. Jeddah has one of the highest rates of divorce. And remarriage too. So it's not that they've given up. Wow. One of our therapists said recently, marriage is a tool to happiness. So is that tool working for you or not? It's not necessarily just an end goal. And back to that hamster wheel or us living on autopilot. We're like, okay, I need to grow up, get an education, get married, have children. Okay, but let's think about each of those steps and not just like get married for the sake of getting married or have kids and tick all these boxes. We have to be kind of active agents in our life and make those choices consciously and think forward.
So at ACT, we touched on that you deal with 3 different types of people: children, adults, and then those in the corporate world. Do you have you in your career there, have you worked with all 3 different areas?
I have. I worked, before I had my own kids, I worked with children a lot more and play therapy and art therapy, and that was really great.
That must have really prepared you for when you did have kids. You came trained.
I came trained, or trained as possible. But Bab al-Najjar makhloua or mkhalla, or whatever they say. So all that training, I don't know what I would be like without it.
It's a Saudi analogy, meaning that the carpenter's door isn't working. You'd expect a door of a carpenter in his house to work perfectly, but that's not the case with you. I mean, I'm sure.
No, it is. My door is on its hinges. It takes a lot of practice, but that fact makes me able to relate a lot more to the clients. And I did a lot of parenting. We should do parenting workshops, but the more I struggle with my kids, the more I can relate to the moms and dads coming.
Harder to work with kids or adults?
Honestly, it depends on the phase you're in.
Sorry, we're going off piste here.
It's each person's
different. Can't compare
character, and you can, but it's I loved working for kids for a long time, but now I work with adults. I don't even do parenting anymore.
Okay.
I just love the intellectual challenge, kind of looking at life. And there's so many aspects to consider. Because everyone comes with their narrative, so we change their narrative, their script. What's your script? Do you want to continue living this script? Can we rewrite your script together?
Yeah. So my son, just going back to you finding it easier or working with adults more, I have a son who's 3 years old, and he's starting to negotiate.
Oh, yeah.
And he's winning. Like if he wants something that I'm saying no to, he'll throw a fit. Now I can do one of 2 things: give it to him so he can quieten down, or stand my ground and say no. So that's a place that I'm right now battling with him.
Yeah.
I have been involved at work in negotiations and difficult ones, but honestly, it hasn't been as hard as negotiating with my 3-year-old.
Absolutely.
It's challenging.
It is challenging. It's challenging. But if you give in to the tantrum, he's boss.
Okay. So it's crucial to stand my ground and
in a gentle, accepting way where you validate feelings. I mean, if we all validated each other, it's my favorite word. They make fun of me at work. You know, validating someone's emotion, being like, I can see you're frustrated. I know you really want this, but you know, you can have this cookie after dinner. You know, for example, and I know you, and let him have that tantrum. The second his tantrum changes your behavior, you've reinforced it.
You have, yeah, absolutely. Hardest part of your job, Assia. What would be the hardest part of your job? Give it to us straight here.
The hardest part is sitting with some really painful stories, sitting with and going home with them sometimes, or hearing, especially the child abuse that goes on. It's kind
keeps
of
you up for nights.
Some cases have, yeah.
That's the saddest thing ever.
Yeah. And it's you really breaks your heart, and I've struggled a lot with it in my profession, and I've tried to see so many other professionals as well, supervisors, energy healers, because at one point I almost gave up on the world. I'm like, this is such an evil place.
Such an evil place.
And the atrocities that people can do, you know, and that's not even a war crime. You know, this is people in their own homes to their own children or their own nieces or nephews.
They get away with it. It's the craziest part.
And it's all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, humans are humans everywhere. People can have their prejudices, their biases, but humans are humans.
Yeah.
You know, I
has no language. Abuse has no language.
It has no language. And the problem is not being able to escape that space.
Yeah.
You know,
You
if they're
can't
being
unhear
abused,
it.
and you can't. No, I meant for them.
Okay.
They can't, you know, escape the abusers.
Powerless.
Powerless. In some, you know, and mashallah, in Saudi there's so many more, you know, women's shelters and programs, and just even the laws on child abuse and everything have changed a lot more.
That's interesting you say that. So if you hear a story of a child being abused, can you report that?
Yeah, you have to report it now.
You have to report it.
You do it with the permission of the...
So you go to the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, there are certain bodies, and they take it into their own hands. But yeah,
this is new, right?
Yeah, that you're required to. I think so.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Like you just really turned a sadness, you turned a frown upside down with that, because that gives them power now.
Yeah.
You know. You know what breaks my heart is those who aren't coming to facilities like yours.
Yeah.
And I hope that, you know, those out there who are affected by abuse or anything where they feel powerless, they speak up.
Absolutely. I mean, we were trying to do what we can to empower them with support groups as well. And now with online therapy, people who are afraid to leave their homes or they can't leave their homes can just, you know, have their session online or have their session over the phone. So people in Mecca and Jizan and wherever you want.
No excuse.
I mean,
And
there are reasons.
The Saudi government is behind this. They take it very seriously.
They're taking it very seriously. Just also in terms of, there's a lot more support for these injustices from the government, definitely. Even in terms of, you know, women driving. You know, they're like, if someone, you know, bothers you, the punishment, harassment, that's pretty high.
It's another thing, even on a corporate level, corporate harassment. You hear about it a lot. You know, movies have been made of it, and I'm sure that happens a lot here in Saudi. So I implore, you know, I beg anyone who is listening to this and is affected by harassment in the workforce, male or female, to speak up about it.
Yeah.
And if I can find a number where you can call and voice your concern, I will tag it. I will put it in the bottom of this video, because you know, we should always speak up about this.
Absolutely. And one of the first steps they can take, if it's something that they can manage, is to work with a therapist to empower themselves to create their boundary.
Yeah.
Because it's instead of necessarily always first going to the rescuer, it's being your own rescuer.
Yeah,
you know. And
you know what's crazy? Once you stop dealing with a problem you've been dealing with for the longest time, you look back and say, how did I put up with that all this time? It's almost like a waste of life.
Yeah.
Once you speak up, or once you knock the bully out, you're like, why the hell did we put up with that person all this time? I've been in situations in schools before where there was a bully in class, and we just let him take his way, until one day 3 of us said, you know what, let's deal with him, and he never bullied us again. So I'm not saying, get physical, get violent. I'm saying speak up if something bothers you.
Yes.
And just not put up with it for the longest time.
Yeah, and it's that difference between being aggressive and being assertive.
Yes.
You speak of bullies and whatever. Sometimes our emotions feel like they're bullying us. You said you dealt with a lot of anxiety.
I have.
How did you deal with that?
Breathing. Working out. I realized that working out and getting my heart rate up neutralizes the anxieties. And since I've been good. The cheap dopamine is an unhealthy meal, sitting on your couch doing nothing. Well, that results, into further, complications with your body. But a fit mind, a fit body is really all you need, I think, to get you through, at least for me.
Yeah, and it's that, like you said, that too much of almost, it's still dopamine, but it's a fake dealing with boredom. You're not actually dealing with boredom, you're just masking it. And you're actually entering a world where 80% of what most people are looking at is meaningless. It's, how to do the latest makeup or, sadly, so much of it isn't fulfilling.
It's not tangible.
It's not tangible. My mom always used to say, only boring people get bored. So, and I say that to my kids and they're like, Mama, no, but it's true. There's so much available to us. So much you can do.
How about reading a book next time you think you're bored? The book is what really is what should kill boredom, not your iPhone.
Yeah, and that takes training,
Yeah. So what would you say your favorite part of the job is?
It's being in that special space where, as your client comes to trust you, they kind of allow themselves to be human. And we can meet like that as people, which rarely do people, meet like that in real life, which is kind of like my goal of what I want people to do. They take off their shields. They, leave their ego at the door. I mean, and one of my favorite moments is when we get to that stage, when they're just like, I can be human, I can be vulnerable.
How long does that take typically? Months?
It can be. It depends on the client. They could be so ready for it. There can be people who are ready to, and how they respond to the space and what they've been through in their lives. And I mean, it doesn't take too long anymore. I feel like people are more ready to it, and people are also doing other things if they're meditating and journaling. And if you come to therapy and you kind of do the homework that we set, then we get there much faster. Yeah. But it's just so beautiful to see. I know beautiful is such a cheesy word, but it's a humbling, and it saddens me as well as being my favorite part, because in those moments of being seen, for who you really are and with no expectations, it's so different from the outside world. And I can just see people come in and they take off their masks, and then they get ready to leave and they put the mask back on and they go out into the world. But we're all the same. So why can't we live in a world where we don't have to wear masks with each other, where we feel safe? And one thing that I have been so impressed with, and in terms of the therapy developing over the 10 years, is how many Saudi men have come and opened up.
Wow. Individually?
Individually, as well as in groups sometimes. I've had a Saudi, an amazing group of 10 Saudi men, who came and took a parenting course. Okay. They wanted to be involved. They wanted to know what they were doing.
Awesome.
Sometimes the mothers groups, went for 12 or 20 sessions, but they came and they were like, design a course for us that's like 4 evenings. For a very long.
Are you driving these days?
I am. Oh my God, it's one of the best things that has happened.
Freedom, huh?
Freedom and just independence.
Yeah.
Not having to rely. It helps the household function better.
Who would have thought you can drive your car to the cinema on a weekend? 3 years ago, that wouldn't have been if you can find parking.
But yes, 3 years ago.
You couldn't, huh? 2017, no cinemas, no driving, and here we are, 2020. You can do both.
And it's interesting how naturally everyone adapted to that.
Naturally. No problems.
Every other car is a woman driving and no problem.
Begs the question. And every time I go to the cinema, I go once a month, and I look at my wife, I'm like, why couldn't we have this all along?
Yeah.
This, we made it a big deal for no reason.
Yeah.
We'd go to London, we'd go to Dubai. Oh my God, cinema! If only we had it back home, and it was just such a seamless introduction to our culture.
Absolutely, so many things are. I think people are ready for it. I mean, what's the expression? Everything happens in its time.
In its time, yeah.
But
But anyway, it happened now, and things are changing, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to know the story about your mom being from British Guyana, which is a little country in the northeast part of South America.
Did your research?
I did my research, and I'm a geography minor.
Okay. I'm definitely not, so I had to do my research too.
It's in South America, I promise you.
I was like, what countries are next to it?
Yes.
Venezuela, Brazil, حفظت الخريطة. Learned the map.
So she's from there, and how did she meet your dad, who's from Saudi?
She left Guyana when she was 16, and she went to boarding school in the north of England. And then she met my dad in Cambridge, in the town where he was studying there as well. And my aunt, my elder aunt, had her elder sister had met my dad first, and my mom arrived, to the town to visit her, and she was like, stay away from that Saudi guy. Of course, I think my mom was 17, 18, and a year later they were married.
In a year from meeting each other, amazing.
Almost, yeah. She was 19.
What a story!
19,
that's
and
fantastic.
that's the love story I look up to.
That's
amazing.
Allah yahfazhum. I mean,
So that's been her life.
Yeah.
It's been with Baba.
Yeah.
They've been with each other, a family unit of.
MashaAllah, this is in the 70s we're talking?
This is in the 70s, yeah. Because I was born 4 years later.
Okay.
What do we have to say?
Right.
That was so, yeah.
So then she moved to Saudi a few years after they?
Yeah, they got married. They moved to California. They lived there in Connecticut, and then they moved back to Jeddah.
Back to Jeddah.
No, actually, no, not back to Riyadh.
Yeah,
Riyadh.
Exactly,
Riyadh. Yeah, Riyadh until almost 96.
She must have some stories about what Saudi was like, in the late 70s. She lived, throughout the whole, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000 until today.
Until today, yeah.
She would be someone I'd like to get on the podcast. Come to think of it, if I can get her, I'll set this up in her house.
In her house,
just exactly. So I don't have to trouble her. But it must be amazing, to have someone, with a cold eye, no expectations, not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
Saudi's all we knew. We grew up here. This is all we know. But someone who's lived in South America and then the UK, and then in Saudi, it must have been, just. She must have a lot of stories of what that must have been like living here.
She does. But our memories of our childhood, and even how she describes life back then, it was just so simple and easy.
Yeah.
We ask her things about parenting, and she's like, I don't remember. It was just easy. It was simple. It was just, there were no iPhones. There was no.
It was a nice time.
It was such a nice time.
It was a nice time.
Such a nice time. I mean, my childhood in Riyadh was very special.
Yeah. People were on time back then. If we said Thursday, which was the first day of the weekend, at 5 p.m., at that ice cream place, everyone will be there.
Yeah. We had a few families that kind of, were kind of from Jeddah and some of their local families, and we'd get together every weekend. And it was so family oriented, so much time with my parents, so much quality time. They were less distracted, because now a lot of the problem that's affecting family time, it's not just kids on their iPads and stuff, it's the parents. The parents are just as distracted, and they want to be on they're addicted. We are addicted because of the dopamine rush. You want more of it. It's like light, it's the hits that you want.
I catch myself sometimes on my phone when he's tapping my arm. And he'd go 5-6 seconds, and I'd realize, I'm like, Mo, this is the exact person I wanted to not be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
me too.
It's just the distractions of what we have really limit the times that we have, to spend with our children, and that's not okay.
It's not okay because we live on autopilot. So to come off autopilot, we need to question. Say, what are our values? So let's say, for example, my value is I value family time, and I want to spend time, as much time as possible, quality time with my kids. Don't take your cell phone to the table. Stop answering work at a certain time.
That's the answer.
We don't do that. So we all need to ask ourselves, what are our values? And then you kind of, every action you take toward that, towards that is kind of like a vote that you make for yourself. So if we look at all the actions that we're taking and how we live our daily life, are we voting for ourselves or against ourselves? Are we living consciously or unconsciously?
I'm so glad I'm recording this, because if I wasn't, I'd be taking notes right now. That is some vital piece of information when it comes to how we should carry ourselves with our children. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and for everything with our friends and stuff. People are always messaging the people they're not with.
Yeah.
It's this thing of wanting to be connected where you're like, please, let's just connect. Look at me in the eyes.
They're never really present.
And I'm guilty of that too. I come here saying, I haven't figured it all out. I'm working day and day, and what I try and say now is what is what I've figured it out. What I've figured out so far.
Yeah.
But by no means is that the right answer. And every day I'm open
constant
to that
work
possibility. Yeah. But like they say in The Alchemist, listen to your heart.
Yeah.
And how are we living?
Yeah.
What's our purpose? Big questions.
Very big question.
I don't have my answer. So I'm looking for it.
You seem like a very happy person, okay? And you're in the field of psychotherapy, analysis, and all that. Sorry if I, mispronounced the profession. Everyone wants to be happy these days. They want to seek happiness. I'll buy that. I'll buy this. We established that cheap dopamine doesn't work.
Yeah.
How do you achieve happiness? If you were to, give me a 60-second elevator pitch, how would you achieve happiness? Can anyone achieve it? And if so, to the best of your knowledge, how do you achieve happiness?
It's going to sound counterintuitive. You achieve happiness by not expecting to be happy. Okay, and by inviting in, by facing the discomfort.
Is this have anything to do with that algorithm that happiness equals expectations minus reality?
All our suffering comes from our expectations.
Okay.
So when you adjust your expectations, if you adjust your expectations, you don't suffer as much. If you look at any kind of relationship, and a lot of our unhappiness comes from interpersonal relationships too. So your relationships with the other. It sounds counterintuitive because, okay, let's say, how do we deal with uncomfortable feelings? We either ignore them, or we say...
It's me.
Okay, most of us. Or we say, and then the new field is kind of like, okay, no, let's face them, let's invite them in, which is fine, be like, okay, here you are. But the third thing, and the third way to deal with it, the best way to deal with discomfort is to befriend them, is to be like, hey, what's up? What can I learn from you? Why are you here? Everything is information. Every emotion we have is information. Back to the values. If you feel guilt because you're not spending time with your child, that's a good thing. That guilt is telling you that you value spending time with your child versus the pervasive guilt or something that you might have learned or, picked up in your childhood. But if you allow your emotions to come through and you understand your negative emotions, we're not controlled by them, because you don't want to be controlled by emotions. You want to control your emotions, or at least understand them, and then that will allow you to be happy because you no longer need to be distracted. Everything we do is kind of to avoid discomfort. So you drink water because you're thirsty. You eat if you're hungry. You're cold, you put on a sweater. But
so true. Simple then, yeah.
It's simple, but one of the biggest discomforts that we have is the discomfort of wanting. Mm-hmm. So you buy something because you want it, and why do we want it? Because we're told that we'll be better if we have it, which is the consumer victim. Yeah. But are we really? Recently, okay, let's say we're all it's a subject close to my weight obsessed and health obsessed, and someone's like, if you lose weight, and oh my God, you look so good, and I turned around the other day and I'm like, do you love me more now? And maybe it was a bit sarcastic, but it's because it's a battle that I don't enjoy facing, and this thing that if I am thin enough, if I am beautiful enough, I will be loved more. But is that the truth?
Is that the truth?
We're all, maybe to a certain extent, in some things, yes, people value beauty and aesthetics, but there isn't an end goal. You aren't going to reach it. There's an amazing course that I think was really subscribed during Corona. Like a lot of people watched it. Dr. Laurie Santos of Yale, and it was called The Science of Happiness or the Science of Well-Being. And she kind of shows you all these studies of these things that we think will make us happy, like being, having a certain amount of wealth, a certain number of friends, a certain number of likes on Facebook, and she really, cuts it down to what matters, and the human connection, exercise, meditation, gratitude. So these are all things that can help us live a more fulfilling life. And of course, I know it sounds contradictory, and people do value. It's hard because we're all programmed to value certain things. Yeah. So if I were to say, forget about all those things and not care about them, then also I won't fit in, or we all struggle with a sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly, coming on the show, being on video is a big deal for me. But that's probably because I'm programmed to feel insecure about certain things that, the world, I'm a victim too.
I'm very proud of you putting yourself out there. And, they say do one thing every day that scares you.
Yes.
You have a big check for today.
I do.
I think you're good.
I have the best.
Good for the month. 2020 check. I did something that scares me. I tend to ask this question, not by choice, but this is kind of become a staple for me. It's the last question I leave my guest with. And it's a letter to your 10-year-old self. if you were to send a little letter or a note to your 10-year-old self, what would that letter read?
It would read, take more risks and don't take life too seriously. You know, kind of live freely and don't be worried about what other people think. You know, at the end of the day, you're the only one living that life, and we don't want to be controlled by others. So again, I know I said it before, but kind of checking in, listening to your heart, doing that meditation or that, you know, connection with the divine, and you can't go wrong. But I think it would be to take, I kind of grew up in an environment that was kind of anxious. Be safe. The world is not safe. So I've kind of battled to kind of say, no, the world is safe enough. And, you know, take risks, travel to different places. You know, I'm always, you know, walking or checking. So, I mean, anxiety plays a role, but it you know, you want to kind of cut that off with your kids too, but somehow that's how we're all parenting now. We're helicopter parenting and like, world's not safe, but to my younger self, I would be like, it's safe. Grow up with that safety. Talk to people. Travel.
Yeah.
Go see.
Fall down. You know, get up.
Fall down.
Whatever. Get hurt. You know, it's fine.
Yeah.
The way we protect our children, the way I protect my child, I feel like sometimes I'm not doing him a favor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he's constantly now looking over his shoulder. Is Baba there? Well, you know, Baba one day when he's in school or whatever, you know, he won't be there. So I need to start thinking about preparing him for that day.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
To add to what you said,
yeah.
which is really lovely words. If you know, if you were to send a letter back to your 10-year-old, which is, I'm sure, what you're instilling in your daughter. You know,
be curious.
Yeah.
Be wildly curious. You know, ask any question, because it's in asking the questions that we live, not finding the answers. Because there's always, you know.
Yeah. Don't take no for an answer.
Don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, be brave. And you know what? And this is something that we've talked about a lot. To be brave, you need to be fearful. To be courageous, you need to have that fear. If someone, you know, jumps off the cliff and they're not scared, they didn't need courage. You know, and vulnerability takes that too.
Yeah.
You know, to be vulnerable takes courage, takes strength to, you know, unmask and just be you.
I was going to ask you that question, but then I skipped it, and I went straight to the one about what would you do, a note to your 10-year-old self. I was going to ask you, but since you brought it up, how would you define vulnerability?
Vulnerability takes courage, takes strength. It's putting your ego aside. It's being you without all the habits that we've picked up, without all the shields, without all the masks. You know, allowing yourself to be seen. Yeah. You know, allowing yourself to be human, and instead of these superhuman beings that we try to be.
I would imagine vulnerability is a sensation that most of the people you see have. They feel vulnerable. You know, they feel helpless. And there you are, you know, trying to show them the way, trying to help them break free of that vulnerability or weakness. But and also to embrace that. That's normal. To embrace it. To embrace it. That's my psyche tells me to, you know, ignore it, leave it. You're not that, but embracing it is how you, as a professional in what you do, would advise one. You know, that's how you would tackle it. Yeah, let's embrace it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how painful it is. Because what is the risk of being vulnerable? It's rejection, shame. You know, where you feel exposed. Yeah. So not fitting in, and let's think about what that would feel like and what would happen to you, and we try and take you to the edge of that fear and sit with it. Is it really that bad? It's always our imagination of what it could be that's so much worse. Our bias towards thinking certain things will make us a lot more happier than they do, and as well that something bad will destroy us when it happens it doesn't. So thank you so much. You're honestly, so you've thrown. I want to stay all night talking. So it's amazing, and I'm sure the people listening would want to continue hearing you speak all night, because this is something that at least, you know, many people, not all, but many people can take a lot from, can learn a lot from, gems to go about, you know, living your life. We all need help on some level. And I hope that people here today have learned a thing or two from what you said. Yeah. And I love what you do. Thank you. I don't think there's anything better for a human to do on this planet than helping another human. Yeah. it's everything. Really, it's the best thing that anyone can do is help a person, and you help a person in the most needed way, because as far as the person is concerned that sees you, nobody else can help them. They've got to the point where it's just despair. And it's amazing what you do. And I'm super proud of you and the girls who, you know, initiated this company, ACT, 10 years ago. And it's great to hear, you know, where you guys have, you know, your humble beginnings to where you are now.
Thank you.
So, you know, you're definitely someone who I'm going to want to have again on the show, because the world needs to, you know, hear about this, you know, about how someone could help themselves in their day-to-day lives.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it, Assia, and I hope you enjoyed it.
I loved it. I really enjoyed the space, as nervous as I was, but that's a normal human emotion.
Of course.
And I'm very grateful that you asked me. Really honored, and I just want to end with saying that I'm so grateful to my parents as well, because they really gave us the freedom to kind of follow our paths and do whatever we believed made us happy. And they've just, you know, that safe, that therapy room environment, that safe acceptance and non-judgmental space. And I had that growing up, and I think that just, I feel such gratitude towards that I also, regardless of everything else I went through, but, you know, what they call therapists wounded healers, you know, that's another story. But without them and what they're nurturing, they're really warm, accepting, compassionate nurturing, allowed me to be able to do this. So
it's a great environment to
really grateful.
I cannot echo those words any harder. I think it's the perfect environment to grow up in a household with parents that are understanding, that are accepting, that
allow you to be
you. And show you the way. And if you know you want to go in a different path, I'll support you. Let's see where you're going. I might learn something from you. As a parent.
Absolutely. And you know, that's what therapy is. It's allowing you to claim your home back. It's allowing you to be you. You don't need to be different. You just need to come off autopilot and go back to you. Go back to being home.
It's amazing. Lovely words. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks so much.
And we'll speak to you soon, inshallah. All right. Thanks, Assia. Bye-bye.